Our next presenter is William Stoneman, who's well known to lots of people in this room. He's the curator of early books and manuscripts of the Houghton Library in Harvard, and for a long time he was the Scheide librarian at Princeton University. And he's going to be talking to us about a very interesting and overlooked source for research and information, exhibition catalogues. So, thank you.
Thank you very much. This is a report on work that I'm doing by myself. Tracing the history of individual printed books and manuscripts from creation through to their present homes is now an accepted and well-practiced scholarly approach in the field of book history. As individual examples, the bibliographical data from these books themselves tells us a great deal about their production, value, use, alteration, and preservation over the life cycle of the objects. An historical bibliographical source which has not seen much use up until now, and which allows us to use collective bibliographical data, is the genre of temporary exhibition catalogues. These records of temporary loan exhibitions can reveal a great deal about how the books and manuscripts were valued at the time of the exhibition, what topics are of interest, what is considered essential information in a description of the object exhibited, who loaned the object to the exhibition, where are these books and manuscripts now? Does the actual fact of the exhibition of the object have an influence on or perhaps reflect its perceived value? How does the exhibition fit into the larger pattern of the book's history? I've explored this topic in a number of papers read at conferences in London, Oxford, Cambridge, New York, and Boston, but two recent publications have been very helpful to me in placing my work in a larger intellectual context. They are Giles Waterfield's The People's Galleries, Art Museums and Exhibitions in Britain, 1800 to 1914, which was published in 2015, and just recently, Stacey J. Pearson's Private Collecting, Exhibitions, and the Shaping of Art History in London, the Burlington Fine Arts Club, which was published earlier this year. I also would like to acknowledge Manuscript Illumination in the Modern Age, Recovery, and Reconstruction in 2001, with contributions by Sandra Hindman, Michael Camille, Nina Rowe, and especially Rowan Watson, which has provided a foundation for my exploration of this topic. On the screen is an incomplete and highly selective list of temporary exhibitions that included medieval manuscripts and early printed books, and that took place between the dates of 1857 and 1939. Both sides of the handout that I have just had distributed and is in the next room also are probably incomplete. The 5 exhibitions in bold will be the subject of my brief remarks today, and I hope that my comments on them and the books and the manuscripts in them will be indicative of their value as an important source for book history. I should pause and say I don't think I'm going to get through all 4 examples in the 10 minutes, but I'll summarize as quickly as I can. The Burlington Fine Arts Club of 1874 and the Liverpool Art Club exhibition of 1876. The Burlington Fine Arts Club was founded in 1866 as a gentleman's club whose purpose was to exhibit the collections of members at its premises in Mayfair in London. These exhibitions were entirely privately funded and open to the public only by invitation. They were frequently accompanied by catalogues. They reflect the members' personal and collective interests, and while they were sometimes lectures and occasional gallery tours to accompany these exhibitions, these played a very minor role compared to the public programming which we associate with loan exhibitions today. You will see from the handout that there were similar clubs in Leeds, Liverpool, New York, and Boston. William Bragg, whose dates are 1823 to 1884, a prominent civil engineer from Birmingham and at one time mayor of Sheffield, had first exhibited 50 items from his collection of medieval manuscripts at Leeds in 1868 at a National Exhibition of Works of Art, including this manuscript now at the Houghton Library. He was again the largest single exhibitor by a considerable factor at the Burlington Fine Arts Club of London exhibition of illuminated manuscripts in 1874. Bragg contributed 85 objects to an exhibition of 213 items, which included 161 manuscripts and 52 single leaves and cuttings. So Bragg contributed about 40% of the material. As was customary, labels were written by the owners of the item and might best charitably be described as fairly imaginative in their ascription to known artists. They frequently depended on descriptions supplied by the dealers from whom the items were acquired. The 1874 catalog included a very brief introduction, which read in part, quote, "The magnificent collection of Mr. Bragg, which fills 5 entire cases and part of a 6th, forms the nucleus of the exhibition and should be separately noticed. It may be mentioned to assist those who use the catalog that Mr. Bragg's books are placed separately and as far as possible chronologically, except the Bibles, which are in a case devoted to that class. The contribution of Mr. Henry Hucks Gibbs are also a part, but the rest have been placed in the order in which they came to hand," end quote. Bragg did not die until 1884, but when he put his collection up for sale at Sotheby's in London on the 7th of June, 1876, it was described as, quote, "a magnificent collection of manuscripts formed by a gentleman of consummate taste and judgment," end quote. I think it is fair to question the motives for Bragg's sale just 2 years after this first exhibition. 2 indications of the impact of the Bragg sale on the market, for example, are that more than 58 lots which were purchased by Bernard Quaritch are in Quaritch's Catalogue 31, which appeared only months after the sale. And Sir Thomas Brooke, who we might return to if we have time, acquired 23 lots at the sale. But perhaps even more telling is the fact that in October of the same year, 1876, that is less than 4 months after the Bragg sale, another collector, Dr. Thomas Shadford Walker, was a major contributor to the Liverpool Art Club's exhibition of illuminated manuscripts. Every single one of the 18 manuscripts exhibited by Walker in this exhibition had been purchased by him at the Bragg sale earlier in June of that year. This strikes me as an indication of a man who is buying with an immediate purpose in mind. The Liverpool exhibition and its catalog look remarkably like that of the earlier Burlington Fine Arts exhibition of 1874. Again, the labels were written by the owners of the collections, and the collections were, for the most part, kept together in the cases. Tellingly, Shadford Walker was one of 3 members of the Committee of Management for the exhibition, and his 18 manuscripts were the 3rd largest number exhibited by an individual. Thus, the exhibition of 1876 is suspiciously near the recent acquisition by a collector of a very significant portion of his collection, and the exhibition of 1874 is suspiciously near the sale of another collector of his. I think I'm going to summarize the second example, which is this exhibition at the New Gallery on Regent Street in London of Italian art. The interesting thing about this exhibition is that it included over 1,500 objects, including illuminated manuscripts and printed books, as well as painting, church plate, bronzes, autographed letters, drawings, jewelry, wood carving, ivory, maiolica, embroidery, armor, furniture, musical instruments, and medals. The Earl of Crawford was the largest single lender to this exhibition, and I think I'm going to go over this one. Sorry, which one? That's Keble. Okay. Let's keep Keble in just because it's a nice one. This is item 1331 in the exhibition, and it was bought by Sir Thomas Brooke, who I talked about earlier. He had purchased 23 lots at the Bragg sale, but 2 years before this exhibition, Brooke had published a privately printed catalog of his library, and I suspect his willingness to loan is linked to his present publication. He bequeathed his manuscripts to his brother, who was a canon of the church, and Canon Brooke bequeathed it to Keble College. The third exhibition that I was going to talk about is a exhibition at the Society of Antiquaries in 1896. The thing that you find out when you start plotting this data is that there were 8 institutional lenders and 11 private lenders. There are 7. Let's read. There were 8 institutional lenders who loaned 11 exhibits. 9 manuscripts were owned by these 8 institutions, and they have remained in those institutions. But the 17 manuscripts owned by 11 private lenders had a very different fate. Within a decade, 11 of the 17 had already changed hands. They'd gone to other collectors, 3 of them into private collections. You could say some of those private collections were institutions in ovo, because one of them was Mrs. Rylands building a library in Manchester in honor of her husband, and J. Pierpont Morgan in New York. There's a manuscript that was in that exhibition. This Burlington Fine Arts exhibition of 1908, again, I can summarize what I'm trying to make the point is that 17 of the 30 manuscripts exhibited in 1896 reappear again in 1908 in this exhibition. This is perhaps not surprising given the formative impact of an earlier exhibition on Sidney Cockerell and his interest in English material. So for example, in the time period, those manuscripts have reappeared, but 5 of them were exhibited by William Morris in 1896, and these were now exhibited by Pierpont Morgan. The Hours of Elizabeth the Queen, exhibited by the Earl of Ashburnham in 1896, are now the property of Henry Yates Thompson. And the Psalter Hours of Henry of Beauchamp, Duke of Warwick, earlier the property of Colonel Malcolm of Potalock, was exhibited by Charles William Dyson Perrins. 197 of 270 manuscripts were displayed like this. So a full 73% of the 1900 exhibition was in private property. This is indicative of the number of manuscripts in private collections and the interest in this material. But what's even more remarkable is 119 of the 270 manuscripts, a full 44% of the entire exhibition was owned by only 5 individuals. The lender of the largest number was Dyson Perrins with 50, Pierpont Morgan had 18, Yates Thompson 17, Colonel Holford 17, and Cockerell himself 17. Tellingly, when the exhibition was organized by Cockerell, he was working for Dyson Perrins, describing his manuscripts privately for his catalog. Of these 197 manuscripts then in private hands, only less than 10 are still in private hands today. This group of manuscripts exhibited has become an important source for the Fitzwilliam Museum in Cambridge and the British Library in London. It's also an important source for manuscripts now in American institutions, including the Pierpont Morgan Library, the Walters Art Museum in Baltimore, the Huntington, and the Getty. It is clear, for example, that several of the private contributors used the exhibition to survey the field and mark manuscripts in another collection for future acquisition. For example, Dyson Perrins, already the largest exhibitor in 1908, subsequently acquired at least 6 manuscripts described as others in the catalog. After the exhibition, Pierpont Morgan, and after his death in 1913, the Morgan Library, subsequently acquired at least 13 more manuscripts which they had seen in this exhibition in 1908. A Burlington Fine Arts Club exhibition number is seen to provide a desirable pedigree for any manuscript. An appreciation of who is exhibiting, what, where, when, and perhaps why permits new insights into book history. I hope you will agree that temporary loan exhibition catalogs offer a variety of new information to students of book history. Thank you.